fresh in your memory. So I appreciate you staying on top of those. I make a motion to approve the January 7th board minutes.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye. I make a motion to approve the January 21st, 2021 town board meeting minutes. Second.
Who was the second? Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
I move that we approve the January 28th, 2021 minutes as submitted.
Second.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. Okay, next up on the agenda is a public hearing on the establishment of a progressive development overlay district at 875 Publishers Parkway to allow for senior housing in an OP district. And
Thank you.
we have the developer who's proposing this in attendance tonight, and we also have the engineering firm Passero who has put together the drawings. Now, since, Jess, I feel like this is Groundhog's Day, even though we're 2 days out. I appreciate the plans are up there and all that. I think in the last year, the plans have been up there no less than 2 times, maybe 3 times prior to this. Because it's a public hearing, certainly if you want to present your reasons why you think the town board should issue you this.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't mind,
Yes?
I'll jump in. Yeah, because it's a public hearing for the first time, some of the information that I'll provide might be a little bit repetitive for this board. So I apologize for that in advance, but I'll try to move through it relatively quickly. But, we have been at this for over a year. We first appeared before this board back in, I believe, December of 2019, known as the pre-COVID era. But again, Jess Sudol from Passero Associates. Here with me this evening is Matt Newcomb, the project manager, also from Passero, and Carl Schuler from Union Crossing, who is the developer and the applicant. Our proposal is for a progressive development district and special use permit to support 194 units of senior housing on approximately 24 acres. And it's located on the northwest corner of Route 104 and Hard Road south of Publishers Parkway. The proposal includes 2 four-story buildings at the core of the development, which represents 110 units. And then the remaining area of development is all single-story townhomes that kind of flank the four-story buildings and are around the perimeter, out closer to the roads where they might be more visible. The idea here is to provide high-quality housing options in conformance along with recommendations of the town's comprehensive plan for seniors. We really do have 2 different housing options here. For the more active, I don't want to say younger, but for the more active seniors, we think the townhomes with their own individual garages would be a lot more attractive. But, as those seniors age in place or come from other areas of town, we do have the option, especially if they're mobility impaired, for the multifamily buildings, which have the shorter corridors, they have the elevators, and a lot of amenities that, make housing a lot easier than some of the other options they might be coming from, such as a single-family home. As I pointed out in the past, I don't want to beat this dead horse, if you will, but I do want to mention again, especially for those not terribly familiar with the project or listening for the first time, the concept of senior housing on this site was first introduced to the town over 6 years ago. We, back then, received approval for 210 units on the entire 30-plus acre site. Since then, this 6-acre portion that you see highlighted in red on the right side was sold and developed by U of R. I'm not terribly familiar with that project, so I can't speak to it in detail, but I believe it is currently under construction. That was for a medical office building, which is allowed as of right in this district. This is part of the OP, the Core Area North Office Park District. This particular district allows a number of uses. It allows as of right, meaning you don't need a special approval or you don't need a rezone or variances or a PDD or anything like that. It allows hotels. It also allows office buildings. It allows communication towers. So there are a number of uses that are permitted here. I know there's been a lot of concerns as we've gone through this process and as we've heard from the public about green space, but we're not proposing any change in zoning that would limit the amount of green space compared to some of these other development alternatives that, again, could be built here as of right. But going back to our plan, I do want to point out a few things as it relates to the previous approval. Again, that was granted in 2015. There was a number of extensions. Those since expired over the course of time. But most notably, what we've done is we've gone from 3 stories to 4 stories with our building in the middle, which has allowed us to really cluster the development. The town's comprehensive plan talks a lot about trying to limit building footprint area because that leads to things like stormwater impact. It also reduces green space. So by going from 3 stories to 4, we've been able to limit the amount of disturbance. We've limited the amount of impervious surfaces. We've limited the amount of stormwater management that we need. One of the things that we've done I really want to point out is we've significantly increased the buffer along 104. I think over the years the town has done a really good job in ensuring that wooded buffer and screening is maintained as you drive down 104 from the bridge to the outskirts of town, especially on the north side, pretty much uniformly. That exists as you travel from east to west. You can really notice it. But previously we only had about a 75-foot buffer that was approved. And again, we've more than doubled that, so that's nearly 160 feet where we would keep all that existing vegetation. So from 104, you really wouldn't even be able to see our project. And again, that was accomplished by going from 3 to 4 stories and really sucking in the size of the disturbed area. Another thing that allowed us to do, if you compare the 2 plans, we previously had some of those townhome units up close to Publishers Parkway. We're able to pull them out of there to provide a very large green space and lawn area between the first building, if you will, and Publishers Parkway. And so, what we're really trying to do is limit the amount of impact from the project. After we last met with this board, the project went to the planning board. They had several comments and things that they asked us to look at, a number of studies that we've performed since then. We've done a traffic study, we've done a sewer study, we've done a line of sight study, we've done a market study. I do want to point out the results of the line of sight study show that, even though we did go from 3 stories to 4, it's unless you're really looking for those buildings, you're most likely not going to notice them. We're nearly 700 feet from Publishers Parkway, so if you think about it, that's, obviously more than 2 football fields away. And then from Hard Road on our east side, which is kind of the more significant thoroughfare or arterial, we're more than 1,000 feet away to those buildings. So when we look at that in profile, we more or less demonstrated that you're not going to be able to see those buildings unless you know exactly where to look and when to look and are intentionally trying to see them. And again, all that was by design and really keeping those centered in the project to maximize their distance from the various roadways. And then most importantly, the project is now 60% green space. The OP district with the PDD requires a minimum of 30% green space. So in this case, we are double what the minimum amount of green space is required. So I think that's important, especially, a lot of people, again, have commented on the green space. With this approach that we're proposing, we are doubling the allowable amount of green space. For comparison purposes, I'm going to do this without these all falling down on me. This is just one example, and I think we passed out some smaller versions of, what this thing could possibly look like if it was developed as an office park, which is an allowed use in that district. In no way are we proposing that, but we're showing it as an alternative. And a plan like this most likely wouldn't even need to come before this board. It could go straight to the planning board for site plan approval, much in the same way the U of R building did. So, I think it's important at least to state that, when thinking about why should we grant a PDD or why does this make sense for the area, well, one of the reasons is, because if the parcel is left and we are not the ones that develop it, and somebody else comes in here and decides to do office buildings or light industrial with manufacturing, or I'm sorry, warehousing, which is allowed with a special use permit. It could have far more lot coverage, much less setbacks and things of that nature. I don't think there's any reason to go into great detail with that plan. It was just for comparison's sake to show what else could be built here. And, obviously, sorry, I'll try to talk in the microphone. A project such as that would have significantly more impact when it comes to the amount of traffic that's generated. Senior housing is, in terms of impact, really one of has the least amount of impact compared to almost any other development. For example, there's very minimal traffic generated. It's only about 0.16 vehicles per unit, which is a fraction of other comparable uses. Certainly anything that was commercial or medical office or even regular multifamily market rate housing, certainly a lot less than single family housing. So it's a very, very low traffic generator. I know there was a lot of concerns from the public on potential traffic impacts. Again, those results were shown through the traffic study that it doesn't have a detrimental impact. Again, compared to those other uses that are allowed in this district, I think we would generate the least amount of traffic of any other proposal that could potentially come here in the future. Noise, odors, lighting is all far, far less than a commercial style development, which is allowed as of right, and certainly, again, far more green space and buffering than any of those alternatives. The comprehensive plan, again, I'm trying, Mr. Supervisor, I'm going to stick with your theme a bit of why should we even consider this. The comp plan specifically talks about, focusing development to the core area, and this is part of the core area, and it's called the North Office Park, in an effort to reduce pressure for housing needs elsewhere in town in more rural areas outside of kind of the main corridor of 104 and Ridge Road. So, for that reason, staying in, we're not going somewhere else trying to get a rezone or anything like that in a single-family neighborhood. Again, one of the benefits of this site is we don't have any single-family neighbors, and I can't tell you how many senior projects or multifamily projects we've come across where one of our entire property lines is all senior or single-family homes with their backyards. That's not the case here. We have, a sports facility near us. We have Mirashow Management. We're really not impacting anybody's homes in terms of line of sight or anything like that. And again, it's very low impact to begin with. But that was really the basis for the zoning designation that the town made a long time ago, designating those core areas to focus development. And not just office parks, the comp plan and the PDD provision of the OP district specifically talks about ways to allow for senior housing to occur in this district as a goal. So we see, again, why should we do this? Well, it's much less impact than the alternatives. It's being built, it's satisfying a housing need as demonstrated by our market study. And we're focusing the development in a way that's in line with the comp plan and with the actual zoning code that talks about how and where this type of thing should occur. I think that everybody received a letter that was submitted from our office. It basically talks about everything I'm talking about in a lot more detail, so I won't...
It actually just, the town board has been given all the documents, all the studies and all that,
Good.
so, and I'm sure that'll come up when we close out the public hearing. Because as far as I see, you're presenting, and you're presenting as a thumbs up to doing the project and issuing the PDD. We now have the public, and as you know, because of COVID, we don't have the public all in this room, so the public is going to get the opportunity, and they already have. I have several emails I need to read here to get this into the record of the public hearing, and we also are going to open up the phone lines for anybody that calls in. And these emails and these phone calls during the public hearing could be thumbs up, they love it, and they're with you on this, or they could be people that are talking against it. So,
Yeah, and I'll wrap this up so that we can get into some of that public comment, but I imagine that a lot of the public comment focuses on open space / green space and traffic, and I just want to reiterate that based on the zoning district this is located in, our proposal, I would, be willing to bet is going to be a lot more green space than any other proposal that would come through for the Office Park District and generates far less traffic than any of the other allowed uses in this district. I think a lot of times people might look at a site like this and say, well, we just want to stay green forever. There are certain zoning classifications for that. But in this case, it is zoned to allow all those different things I talked about. And I think that what we're proposing is really the least amount of impact that provides the most green space and the least amount of traffic, which I don't think you might necessarily see if we were to leave and somebody were to go straight to the planning board for site plan approval of, 200,000 square feet of distribution and warehousing. So with that, I'll turn it over unless anyone has questions for me.
I do not.
Oh, there is one other thing I wanted to mention. I'm not going to hand these out. One of the things that we did in preparing for this meeting and while we've been working on the project is we did look for precedent, because you might say, well, it's too dense or the setbacks aren't big enough. And I can hand these out, but the closest comparable project that we found is over on Holt Road. There's the existing senior project. I think it's called the Legends. That's also a senior project. It's north of 104. It's in the OP district. It's more or less one relatively large block over from us. And in that case, the density was approximately 16 units per acre, so it was more than double what we are. Had 30% green space, so we have twice the amount of green space as that project. And their setbacks from Holt Road were only about 75 feet, whereas we're 1,000 feet to our 3 stories building. So in terms of, talking about setbacks and density and impact, I found it interesting that looking at a comparable project that received the PDD, that was approved in the OP district, one road over for us, I think when we look at ourselves in that regard, we way more green space, way less desks, et cetera. I think everybody gets the point.
Thanks, Jess. And as everybody knows, public hearings during the COVID era with the governor's executive orders and all that on people not being able to come into the boardroom, I just want to put the 800-pound gorilla out there right now, is that the fact that the developer and the engineer get to come in and in person present is somewhat not fair to the public who wants to get their comments in. In normal times, if the public wanted to put 50 people in here and all go up there and talk, they could. So it's with that preface that I say I think only to be fair that I will read each of these 14 emails that we got, and they will go into the record, Dolly, where they can. And then once I'm done with those, I'm hoping that Karen in the production room can flash on the screen for anybody watching at home that we will open it up for 5 minutes for any phone calls from the public that wants to come in. So, I am going to try to read these quickly, but not so fast that I'm not giving them the due respect they deserve. Chris Jones at 903 Joylene Drive emailed in and said, "The people of Webster do not want this approved. Please do your job and represent the people of Webster." And then Rachel Palmero emailed, "I'm opposed to further building on the land at 875 Publishers. The traffic from both schools located there is horrendous as it is. There is already new development close to the 104 Expressway and hard that causes traffic delays and congestion. We have enough senior living facilities in the area. Keep the land green. Wildlife has nowhere to go at this point." An anonymous emailer said, "Please do not approve. The social and economic impact to the town of Webster will be devastatingly damaging. Keep Webster and the green space that is left intact. Stop overdeveloping Webster. Webster citizens live here because they do not want to be in crime-ridden Greece or Gates or Irondequoit." Subjective statement. Let alone the impact on traffic flow and safety of pedestrians, bicyclists, and any type of travel. No need for high-rise eyesore buildings and in demolishing of green space. Stop. No more development. I'm going to say again, I'm going to err on the side of caution because that person could be standing at that podium and say those words. And there was nothing we could do to stop them. So if any of my friends in those towns that were mentioned that when are listening, I apologize. I don't know if that's accurate about your towns. In fact, I don't think it is.
Samantha Swan at 528 Lake Road says please, enough with the building. It's not necessary for people or the planet. Enough greed, enough wealth. Webster is one of the few Rochester suburbs that is still beautiful. Ridge Road is hideous enough, please enough. Doreen Genga of 728 Northbrook Way says, too much traffic already with 2 large schools, businesses, and sports complex. Already have a lot of apartments for seniors, no more, thank you. Melissa Zeller on Bending Bow Drive says, in my opinion, as a Webster native, 40 years and living off Hard Road currently, children attending Thomas High, this housing is not necessary. Traffic during school hours and activities is quite something to be in and of itself, along with the Marquee Senior Living that was just built a few years ago and Winding Creek Apartments at the intersection created more traffic. Let's please add CDS Monarch that provides more services and support and transportation to the intersection and Webster bus transportation and highway department traffic. How could this area support more senior housing within the projected area? Sports events at the Ice Arena and Lakefront Soccer Club and at both schools will be very busy at times. I think this is a definite no. Daniel Steensma of 815 Tinker Tavern Road says, the amount of traffic on Hard Road from existing schools, hotels, shopping facilities, restaurants, and apartment buildings has already strained the capacity of roads in the area to provide safe usage. Frequent traffic backups, accidents, and impatient drivers running red lights are already what people in the area have come to expect. The amount of traffic and traffic-related problems will only intensify when the new URMC facility is operational. How is it possible that we are already discussing the establishment of a progressive development overlay district at 875 Publishers Parkway? I have already witnessed one badly injured person stretched out across Hard Road after a particularly horrible motor vehicle accident. How many more bodies strewn across our streets will it take before the town realizes what it has done to the quality of life in Webster with rapid overdevelopment of the past decade? How much longer will the school gym classes and athletic programs be able to jog down Hard Road? And how much longer will anyone be able to walk to the library? Every day I see an elderly woman walking down Hard Road picking up trash from alongside the road. Perhaps some of the town board members have seen her also. Are you concerned about safety or the safety of our schools' children? If so, please vote no to the establishment of a progressive development overlay district at 875 Publishers Parkway, or we might as well change our motto to where life was once worth living. Tracy Siebert Konopko of 1201 Imperial Drive states, please do not allow for more development in the proposed areas, particularly if it means eliminating green space and creating traffic congestion. Let's keep Webster from being an overdeveloped nightmare of a town. So we're getting there, gang. We're on number 9 out of 14. David Naka of 893 Hard Road says, if Webster residents are part of input on town projects, please consider me for this project. Thank you. I believe this is too giant a development for this location and space, so close to the major highway intersections for traffic congestion. Should be at least half the amount of apartment units in size. Property taxes are already high enough. This won't dent our taxation cost enough or at all. It will only make Webster less aesthetically pleasing and bring more sound pollution, but especially while the years it will consume in building infrastructure and buildings. Let's talk traffic implications, air and noise pollution on the Publishers Parkway to the schools and students, especially to the Hard Road 104 intersections and on and off ramps because of the already new road exiting this complex so close to the intersection of Hard Road and 104. This is a major concern with loss of so much green space squeezing so many senior apartments, 194 units into such a small space, not just to current residents already in Webster, but also to quality of life for the future apartment residents, seniors living in a complex with little sight and sound barrier from the constant loud buzz of 104 Expressway right on top of it. Apartment next to the highway is horrible. I know this because I live next to the highway. The constant buzz and sight is not a quality of life. The sleep deprivation and feeling of harassment from noise pollution is all too real. I urge strong consideration of leaving many yards long of trees and green space to prevent sight and sound pollution to future town residents. Also, loss of the green space barrier from 104 bike walkway to the apartments for residents using the paths. And back to size, 100% no to the proposed 2 4-story apartment building. Wow, how ugly and unappealing for the town of Webster. A complete embarrassment to have it viewed every day on 104 replacing green space. Thank you. Scott Nicholson of 771 South Huckleberry Way says, I'm not in favor of the location of this project. To say nothing of the increased traffic, I do not think a 4-story building add to the flavor of town, which has a wide open space and is still largely rural. An example of this kind of development can be seen next to the Penfield YMCA. That four-story eyesore is completely out of character in a rural area. I do not oppose development to build the tax base to protect against a Xerox exodus and provide housing for increasing senior demographic, but the amount of available space in Webster, I cannot see how another site would not be more appropriate. I moved here in 2017 from Melbourne, Florida, and I can tell you firsthand that unenlightened development looks like traffic snarls, public service pressure, environmental degradation, and just plain ugliness. In my opinion, this project has to be done smarter. Deborah Thiesing of 811 Hard Road says, my concerns for this change to allow this developer to create the senior housing in this saturated traffic area are many. I realize our area does not seem to have any office park business coming in, and that too would create additional traffic. Changing to overlay to allow this project is ridiculous. I know landowners are allowed to develop their property within the parameters that many time projects make it through and are detriment to the areas. This area is saturated with traffic. I live on the corner of Hard and Publishers, and the traffic at the light is backed up both on Hard and Publishers. School hours being the worst with buses and parents dropping children off. The project across Hard already has 3 buildings of senior housing. Additional housing for non-seniors was built and more are being built at this time. The new URMC project that will share the Hard Road entrance was presented as leaving trees around the parameter, and I would note that I fully expect this project will follow suit. Also, the 2 larger buildings are slated to be 4-story buildings. I know my family and neighbors do not want to look at 4-story buildings, lights on all hours of the day and night. I know my concerns may be ridiculous, but Webster residents want less traffic. They want to see trees. They want their town to be beautiful. This type of continued practice makes Webster like every other overbuilt town. Corey Gaffney of 461 Time Drive says, the once quaint town of Webster has lost its charm. I grew up in the Ross area. I'm originally from the west side. And I always had a passion for Webster, something about being close to the water, so much to explore, close enough to stores, necessities, yet not too congested. Well, those times are gone. Webster is growing way too fast. What happened to all the beautiful green spaces? Instead, I find myself stuck in traffic while construction trucks are constantly driving by and trees continue to come down. I lost count of how many apartment complexes there are now, as I feel at least 2 more went up within the last few years. The stores are always packed, and we already have 2 high schools. Not a day goes by that I don't wonder what this area will be like once my kids become school age. Ontario is looking more and more enticing. Adding 4-story senior apartments in addition to the recently improved medical building is the last thing this town needs. Joshua Roberts at 622 Preservation Trail says, enough is enough with the developing green space in Webster. Traffic is atrocious already on many of the roadways and plazas. If we keep developing, we will be in the same shoes of the towns of Greece and Henrietta. Overdeveloped and empty commercial buildings, which we already have too many of. Not to mention there's already a large senior living complex in the area. Webster does not need any more development until we can fill already vacant facilities in town. I stand firmly against it. And last but not least, I didn't get a chance to print this. Thank you, Karen, for getting it to me digitally. It came in late. Melissa, boy, let's try this again. On Appian Drive, one of the downsides of digital. Let's see if I can. All right, I'm going to have to come back to Melissa's as I have to reboot into the internet. So I guess this is as good a time as ever to ask Karen to put on the screen the call-in number, and it is 8 o'clock. We will open calls for 5 minutes or until the calls cease.
She gave you a thumbs up.
She gave me a thumbs up. Oh, and I was able to, I rebooted. So Melissa on Appian Way says, I have concerns regarding this proposed development. Firstly, the traffic implications onto Hard Road and 104. How much added traffic will this development create for this area? Also, I am concerned by the loss of trees and green space caused by such a large development. The proposed 4-story buildings would be an eyesore in that location. Well, I hope I did those justice. Didn't read them too fast, too slow. And here comes call 1. And I hope I do this correctly. Hello?
Rebecca. I sent one of the emails into you. Thank you for reading it. I appreciate it.
You got it, David. Do you have anything to add other than what I read from your email?
Well, I just want to state about the developer. I don't know if that's the gentleman there, but I've called his office twice in the last few days. I don't get a return call, and I don't feel that they respect the people living out here, because if they did, they would have talked to me, because they built this medical building, and I'm trying to get a berm situated between my property and theirs, and I just want to talk to them about it. And
Okay,
one of
and
the,
David, I just want the medical building that you're talking about, this
Yeah.
developer is not building that medical building. Is that correct?
okay. I
So-
thought before I was in charge of both.
No, and I appreciate your call, and and I hope that they respond to you, but that is out of the purview of these gentlemen that are here on behalf of the senior project, and I do appreciate the very detailed email you sent in on this, David. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Okay. So, like I had said, at least in my short time as supervisor, this was as much documentation that I've ever had to go through for a public hearing / resolution. And I'm not talking about the emails I just read, the traffic studies, the senior housing saturation, multifamily things that were done. No question that there was a lot of energy and effort put into giving the town board the materials. So I appreciate that. Hello?
Hi, this is Debbie Thiesing. I also sent one of those emails in.
Okay, Debbie, do you have anything new to add?
I do. I actually kind of have a question ad type thing. The 4-story buildings, which I do believe are rather tall, and I will see them from my house over the top of Marischal Management very well. Most of the buildings I see around the area that are so many stories, indeed, are almost an additional story tall by the time they add the roofing and all the other stuff that go to it. So I'm imagining that we're actually going to be looking at 5-story buildings and not really 4-story buildings. The apartments across the street directly from us on the other side are 2-story buildings, and I'm going to tell you they're 3-story buildings and lit up all hours of the day, and the little tiny bit of green around them doesn't shut anything off.
Yeah.
So my concern,
Sorry, go
my
ahead.
concern with the buildings is that the height is going to be, I mean, there's still a few of us neighbors, no matter what anybody says. I'm still here on the corner of Hardin Publishers. I still can see this project. I still will see this project over the top. There still will be lighting. I appreciate that the project has been moved back. None of us had the ability to see any of this because I didn't get any notices of this, so I didn't realize that it had been pushed back, which I appreciate very much. I do understand the buffer, and I totally understand green space. I know Webster has a lot of green space, and that really isn't my issue. It is the height of the buildings is my main concern, and of course the addition to traffic, because it's very horrible on our
Sure,
corner. So,
and Deborah, I will say this, and I'm going to look at Attorney Genesi in the room to correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. If the town board, after this public hearing, whether tonight or at a future town board meeting, approves a PDD, an overlay district, to allow for this of senior housing in this zoning. The town board is not doing the decision on allowing a 4-story or with a roof pitch that makes it 5-story. That, I think, would go before the zoning board of appeals, because a 4-story building is not to our.
Well, it may be the planning board, but the fact is, this is really a 2-part process.
I understand this product already was approved many, many years ago, and you know, I've already gone through that in my head and resolved myself to that whole
Right,
situation.
well, that approval is,
Because
Yep.
understandably, this was our entire family farm on all this land, so
Sure.
this is, of course, fifth generation, it's, you know, it's
Yeah.
horrific to look at, but I have no one to blame but my own family for selling the land. But,
and
you know,
I will say
you know,
this, that the process here, if this gets approved by the town board, this is far from over, and I think the developer and the engineer know that they're going before then planning boards and zoning board of appeals, because the configuration as it stands, I don't think, and Charlie, you said whether it's planning board.
Well, not only that, but in order to obtain the right to put in senior housing in an OP district, you'd have to get a special use permit or a special permit, which would require another set of public hearings.
Yeah, so it's and I will tell you this, at some point, whether it's the planning board or the zoning board of appeal, that's when either the letters go to people that live within 100 or 300 feet, or at this time, I know we're starting to transition to big posted signs. But that is down the line, and that's totally contingent on the decision of the town board, either
Right,
tonight
right.
or in future board meetings after this public
Well,
hearing,
I would have to
on
say that I
whether we
would-
do an overlay
I
district
would-
approval.
I would prefer, my preference would be this type of thing other than more businesses and commercial stuff.
Sure, and Deborah, like I said, I appreciate that you had a very good email, and I appreciate you also calling in.
Yep.
All right,
All right,
thank you.
good night.
Bye-bye. So if anything, when we do close out the public hearing, I do feel as though the town board members were supplied with a very sufficient amount of information for making a decision on this. I can't speak for all the rest of you, but it was pretty robust.
Yes, we did receive it all. Thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, can I briefly respond to the public comments? It's up to you.
Sure, because I'm gonna say that we're gonna cut the phone calls in 3 minutes if any more come in. So fill in the open air for
Yeah, I'm not
us.
going to repeat too much of what I said, but, you know, based on what I heard from a lot of those comments, it seemed like the alternatives that were being considered was green space versus our current proposal. As I mentioned earlier, the alternatives are really senior housing, as we're proposing, versus hotels, light industrial, offices, communication towers, all those other permitted uses. You know, this area, based on zoning, is slated for development. It's not going to remain green. And of all those things I just mentioned, when it comes to traffic, which seemed to be the primary concern, our proposal is going to be much, much, much less traffic. And our traffic studies have already shown that's not going to have a detrimental impact. Because we're not generating much traffic, that's why we don't have much impact. And in terms of the building height, the OP zoning code allows buildings as of right to up to 55 feet. So somebody could come in tomorrow, right here in these people's backyard, and build a 55-foot tall, 4 or 5 story office building, which, you know, would have all kinds of lights. You know, we're well under that. We're almost a story shorter with our proposal. Now, again, multifamily buildings have additional regulations.
And Jess, I just want to, for people watching at home, and I just don't want any fears that are unfounded. Nobody's going to go in and build a 5-story office building unless Attorney Genesi got some pretty big variances on that. Is that correct?
Well, I don't have the code in front of me. I'll trust that the comment was correct, but we still have to go to the planning board. The planning board would have the authority to limit the height of the building.
Well, it's the allowable maximum building height in the OP district for the permitted uses is 55 feet. So you could go up to 55 feet with those uses without needing a variance, according to the code. And I'm not saying
Do
that.
we have I always like to say, past performance doesn't dictate future.
Well, and we're also looking at something in front of us, not what.
That's correct, and I just know that I don't think, is there an office building in Webster that is 5 stories?
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't know.
Paychecks on Basket Road is probably close.
Is it?
But that's, yeah.
It is, I'm gonna give one more minute, Karen, and then we're going to close the public hearing. And,
Okay.
if we don't get another call, just for the record, I think the public hearing portion started at 7:33. It will be 8:12, so it was about 39 or 40 minutes. Valley.
Yeah.
Supervisor, you know it has some time here, and it's still public. As superintendent of highways, I have some concerns. And I know as far as what your project is, Jess, correct me if I'm wrong, you said 0.16 or 1.6 as far as vehicles?
Trips per unit?
Yeah.
It's 0.16.
0.16. You've got 405 parking spots slotted, either in the building or outside. I have no idea what the ADTs are, but I also don't know offhand if you're aware of the facility that is directly to the west of this. It is the soccer facility.
I've spent many nights there with my daughters.
Okay, so you realize that on Mother's Day, that is the largest tournament in the entire East Coast? And
I've
that
been to that
becomes,
tournament on more than one occasion.
so, same here, especially with 3 daughters that I'll play. But between that and Hard Road, with the bus garage, the highway garage, and Willing School being added, Hard Road is chaos, it's mayhem, especially trying to get out. I'm trying to get plow trucks out, especially if I'm anywhere near peak drive time. I have no idea what the ADTs or the peak generations you have. I have not seen a traffic study. That's something I'd like to look at, but as far as superintendent of highways, I have concerns with the traffic.
Yeah, I mean, we've submitted the traffic study, which I invite you to take a look at. You know, I will say that, especially on weekends, you know, seniors are not out and traveling. I believe that tournament starts on Friday, goes Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You know, as opposed to another allowed use like a hotel. You could put 3 hotels or a 200-bed hotel on the site as of right, 4 stories, which is going to generate a heck of a lot more traffic on a weekend than a senior housing development. So again, if we compare it to what's there today in green space, yeah, we're going to generate some more traffic. But compared to all those other uses, whether it's during the week or during the weekend, you know, our proposal is going to be far less traffic. And I think somebody called in or maybe an email said, you know, we have to think smarter. And, you know, we feel that this is smarter. It's less traffic than anything else that's going to go there. It's more trees, it's more green space, it's more buffering. You know, I know compared to green space, it might be, you know, one comparison, but something's going to go there ultimately, and if it's not this, it's going to be something that has a lot more traffic and a lot more impact.
And thank you, Jess, and like I said, I'm sensitive to the fact that there's a inherent unfairness to the public during COVID, so thank you. I just want to make sure, because the only way the public can rebut is calling in, and I'm about to call it a day on the public hearing. And that is at 8:14. We are closing the public hearing. For the record, it was 41 minutes long, I think, if my math is correct. At this point,
I just want to piggyback on what Joe said with respect to traffic. I did read all of our residents' emails and their concerns, and I actually drove to Publishers Parkway this afternoon at 3:08, and I sat in traffic for 20 minutes as parents entered Thomas, exited Thomas, and it was, the circumstances were, if there's going to be an accident at some point. It's a 2-lane road. It's not that wide. There's minimal shoulder there. In this line of traffic with the parents picking up and dropping off their kids is not COVID related. I mean, this has been going on for years. Sure. And I was it just verified, by doing that, verified what one of the major concerns of these residents are. And I also agree with the 4-story buildings. They're just very unsightly. I've never been a proponent of these 4-story buildings. I realize that there are some senior housing 4 stories on, I think it's Holt Road. And I believe there were some informal conversations at one point that those were allowed at that point, but there was going to be future discussions about disallowing the 4-story building. So now I don't know whether we do something, we have conversations down the road with respect to this OP zoning, and adjust it accordingly. And, but as Tom said, the Supervisor Flaherty, sorry. Holy smokes. We're looking at the project in front of us. And those are my two major concerns.
No, you know,
The traffic exists right now, and it's very bad, and adding 194 units is not going to make things better.
well, the traffic is exactly
Yeah,
what
and Jess, I'm gonna,
okay.
and John, the public hearing is over. So, John, I think
I'm expressing to the
is
board my
expressing to the
concerns.
board, okay?
Yeah.
And thank you, because the public doesn't have the chance to also rebut what you're about to say. The public hearing is over. So I appreciate John has given his thoughts on this. Bill?
I'm not in favor of the project, just point blank. It's too dense, they sold off property to make some money for a business unit. Now they're coming back trying to give us something that's trying to squeeze something in to this property. I'm never in favor of 4-story units. So that's,
Okay. Barry?
I think that the engineer makes a very, very good point that this land is going to be developed at some point. This may be the least impactful of any future development that comes before us. But the traffic on this road, and I don't care what kind of studies we have, the traffic on this road is horrific. Absolutely horrific. You saying that you've been to the soccer a number of times with your kids, you know what we're talking about. Drop a kid off at Willink in the morning, it's a crapshoot as to whether your kids are going to get there on time or not, or you're even going to be able to get out of there. The traffic on this corridor in this area is terrible. And until we get 4 lanes on Hard Road and 3 more lanes on Publishers Parkway, it's not going to get any better. So whatever we add to it now is only going to make everything worse. I'll say it again, this particular project is probably going to be the least impactful project that will appear before us, but I'm not in favor of it.
Patty?
First, I just want to clear something up for all the residents, and many of them, you know, they see trees, they see green, and they want green space forever. And I understand that, I certainly do. But as Councilman Dean said, something will be developed here, because this is not set aside as green space. I appreciate the efforts that you've put into creating as much green space within the project as you can, but I share the concerns of, all the concerns that have been spoken already. I'm not a fan of the height of the buildings. The traffic concerns me. I don't know what the future is going to bring, and I don't know what we'll be looking at for this site, but I know that I'm not comfortable with this one.
Thanks. And you know, it's funny, the comprehensive plan was brought up a couple times, and that's a issue that I guess is very near and dear to me as we sit here in 2021, because it is the 2008 comprehensive plan. So I think everybody knows that it's aged at this point. It's 13 years old. And things that might have made sense in 2008 don't make sense in 2021. I would like to see in the next year or two significant movement made on updating that comprehensive plan. And I would imagine, and I've had preliminary conversations, that certain things like what you just said, Barry, I mean, taking a look at Hard Road in 2021 and looking at Publishers Parkway in 2021, do they need to be expanded? Because there are a couple of senior projects and other things that have gone in the last 5-6 years. And I appreciate, guys, that when you got this approval back in 2015, in parallel to that, there were 2 other senior projects, Monarch and whatever, that were approved. Well, sometimes you get the advantage of hindsight is that, okay, those 2 went up, and now we see the results. Has it added to the traffic? whether it's added to the traffic at 0.16 cars, I'm a little incredulous about that, but that's neither here nor there. What that zoning will look like in the new comprehensive plan, I don't know. But to your point, Barry, and to everything that everybody said, that might be an area that we really need to take a long, hard look at because of what is there now. I agree that on the 2008 comprehensive plan and the current zoning being OP, that you're right, there may not be another proposal that comes before zoning, planning, or the town board that is less invasive as that. But there may never be a proposal that comes before those boards with the OP, because by that time we might have changed the comprehensive plan and thought what is the right zoning and usages for that area in 2022 and 2023 based on what's there. And so with that in mind, I'm not an advocate of issuing the PDD on this project or on the 875 publishers. Attorney Genesi, I mean, now that we've heard all 5 board members, I mean, from a legal and binding standpoint,
Well, the resolution that was prepared obviously was prepared in the event of an approval. I think you can just state that the application is denied. The application for the board to approve a development plan for the south side of the Publishers Parkway north of State Route 104, tax account number 079.06-01-32.122 as a progressive commercial overlay district, PDD, as presented and sought by Taylor the Builder as the contract vendee of that property.
tell me, Charlie, I don't have to repeat all that. Is that now in the record? And I don't, gentlemen, I'll tell you what. I mean, I first sat down with you back in January. I was in the office for about 2 weeks. There's never a good time to hear no. I'm guessing if this went a different way, the no could have come sooner. And I'm sure it's not a lot of solace to you, but even if we had said yes tonight, when I've taken a look at this, I think you would have been up against it at planning and zoning on this, especially in recent history of what has happened with the public as they've come out against projects. And I think we got a glimpse of that tonight. And by all means, we listen to the public. It doesn't totally guide us on our decisions, but it is an influence, and I think that it would have come out in even more as it got to the planning board and the sketch and the preliminary approval and the final approval, and whatever had to go to the ZBA, because I know there's parts of that plan that would have had to go to the ZBA. I'm not sure exactly which ones, but that becomes somewhat of a moot point now, because this, I think, was first base, and we're not getting there. So, thank you. All right.
Is there going to be a motion?
Well, that's what, Charlie, I just want to make sure that for the record, I mean, we got the public hearing and all that.
Well, I think
I move that we deny the
there's an
application.
there's an acknowledgement of the public hearing.
I second that.
I move that we deny the application.
All right.
I
After
second-
there being a public hearing, you're denying the application.
Correct.
All persons have had the opportunity to be heard, and the applicants had the opportunity to be heard.
Yes.
Councilman Cahill? Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Capaldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
All righty. Well, onward. I'm pretty sure that Deputy Supervisor Cataldi was in to do the bills this week.
I was. I reviewed the bills and found all things to be in order, and I would make the motion that we pay the bills.
Second.
Councilman Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
And I looked at the prepaid warrants, and I will say that it was a little melancholy. I got them from Mary Ann Lamb, love Mary Ann Lamb, but not to see him come from Chris, who is retired, is unusual. But they were all in order, so I would make it a motion that we approve them.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye?
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
All right, Paul, let it rip.
All right, time for some budget transfers. I'm proposing that the board approve 2020 budget transfers, which is part of the cleanup, or part of the year-end close process for the fiscal year that ended at the end of December. The biggest items actually pertain to revenue, and a lot of this is COVID-related, but Parks and Recreation revenues came in about $600,000 below budget.
Yeah.
So we have to make budget transfers to cover that shortfall. Some of the other shortages are Justice Court revenue, that's about $40,000 under. Interest earnings, about $35,000 under budget. That's because back in March, the Fed cut the prime rate to 0, which took we were able to earn about 1.5% through Treasury bills, but after the Fed took the prime down, that turned into more like 0.10%. So it was a surprise on the interest line. Also, the Webster Public Library, the revenues there are also down. They're about $48,000 under budget, and that's mainly because they were closed for an extended period of time, and they've had a minimal number of visitors. So,
Paul, before the board or people in attendance here tonight or anybody at home passes out or thinks the sky is falling on those numbers, did we get from CARES and or the county 1.05 million?
yes, we recently received $1,051,000 through Monroe County. The county had received, I believe, $130 million
Yes.
in federal funding, and they distributed that to the various towns and municipalities throughout the county based on certain qualifying expenditures. So we were fortunate to get $1 million, and that's essentially where these shortfalls are being funded from,
Yeah.
because that was unexpected.
In short, Paul, is the $1 million, the $1,050,000 going to cover our losses?
Yeah, it covers it.
Okay.
Should have some left over, right?
And you know, it's funny, Barry, and you know, being an old accountant, the federal government, they never wanted to say this was for lost revenue. They weren't going to use this money to subsidize lost revenue. They wouldn't say that that was what it was directly for. But Paul, I don't want to put words in your mouth. The type of expenses they allowed us to get reimbursement on, it just seemed as though they were somewhat trying to help us with lost revenue. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Most of the expense that we qualified for was the public safety expenditures, law enforcement, for the period March 15th through the end of June. And that was the largest portion. The other piece was technology costs that we incurred to allow people to work remotely. So,
Yeah.
of course, it's subject to audit down the road. You know, the Fed could come in, do an audit, decide that some of these expenses didn't qualify, in which case the money goes back.
And we're in the same position as the private companies that have gotten the PPP.
Oh, yeah.
That were, once they got the, guess what, we're going to forgive the PPP. I'm sure anybody watching at home they either own a company that got that. Actually, round 2 just came out in the last couple weeks from the government. And the caveat is, okay, we gave you 50 grand to a company, and that's to pay your payroll and rent. And then if you prove that you used it for that, then we say it's forgivable and it was like a grant. But the caveat in there is, well, we could come back later and audit it and maybe say differently. That to me is what it's tantamount to.
Oh, yeah.
What you just said. So the federal government is still basically leaving that little thing out there that once COVID blows over, they could come back to private companies that they told we forgave you on that, or come back to governments like us that they gave $1,050,000, which was money they gave us right by the book of the rules that they gave us, right?
Oh, yeah, we checked out the rules. It, in my opinion, after looking into it, it does qualify.
And there you go.
We won't spend it too fast, though.
No.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
So does that, and you can tell I get a little revved up about the government saying, hey, don't worry about it, but you never know. Okay, well, unless the board has any other questions for Paul on those numbers and those transfers, I make a motion to approve the 2020 budget transfers as presented by the Director of Finance.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye?
Councilman Cahill?
All right.
Councilwoman Capaldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Paul, is this you too?
Yeah, is it the budget amendment?
Yep.
Yeah, we have a small budget amendment to the special lighting district, Webster Commons Lighting District, which is SL6 on our books.
Okay.
Had to repair a light pole, which was unexpected, was not in the budget. It cost roughly $2,000, so we're doing a budget amendment to expand the budget, increase the budget by $2,020 to cover the unexpected cost. The money comes from fund balance.
Any questions?
No.
Make a motion to approve the 2020 budget amendment for the Webster Commons Lighting District SL6 in the amount of $2,020.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye?
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Capaldi?
Aye.
Okay. The next one is the resolution to adopt the 2021 standard workday reporting resolution for elected and appointed officials.
Can I give you some background on that?
Could you please?
Sure.
'Cause I looked at it.
Yeah, the New York State retirement system requires the town to document how many standard work days an elected or appointed official works within a month if they're a part-time elected or appointed official. So there are various rules as to when the measurement has to take place. For certain people, it's every 8 years. Best practices for elected officials shortly after the election, which means we're a little late with this actually, but we're backfilling it. So I asked, there were 5 individuals, I asked to give to provide 3 months of work records, and so that we could calculate how many hours they worked within the 3 months. And those hours were fed into a calculation to come up with how many average work days they worked within a month. And this information is required to be documented, passed through a resolution. There's a form RS 2417-A that has to be filled out and actually posted on the town's website, and has to be posted at the town hall, which basically documents the information within the resolution, and it's certified by our town clerk. So the resolution is just to move this forward. And then this form 2417A is sent to the New York State retirement system after it's been posted for, I believe it's 30 days.
Okay. Does any of the board members have any questions about this?
It's pretty standard.
It should be familiar to some of you because we've done them in the past.
Okay,
It's the
that's
first
what I'm
time
glad
I've
to
done
hear.
one.
Because I'm glad to hear that they have been done in the past, because I just wanted to make sure that nobody's at risk of not getting their retirement because it hasn't been done.
Yep.
Okay, well, then I feel better better about that. Well, if no other questions, I propose to adopt the 2021 Standard Workday Reporting Resolution for elected and appointed officials.
Second?
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Capaldi?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Is this Joe Herbst purview?
I do believe, we're talking Abigail?
Yes, we are.
Okay, yep. Couple, 3 years ago, Abigail Way from Hard Road to Lewis was supposed to be temporary or permanently, temporary dedicated to the town, but there were no accommodations in their design for a turnaround, so we did not take dedication at that point, and they continued to maintain wintertime their operations. So then it came in that the next section of Abigail got done from Lewis to Jordache. We did temporary dedication on that. And then once they provided the turnaround, we took the permanent dedication on the latter portion of Abigail, but we never took permanent dedication on the first part from Hard Road to Lewis. So we need to adopt that because our LHI, which is our local highway inventory, cannot be approved to have a road attached to a road that has not been accepted. So we need to accept and adopt permanent dedication of Abigail from Hard Road to Lewis, so I can get that in so we can get our pay from the state.
Well, before I say, is there any questions for the board? I'm going to miss you at these board meetings in the future, Joe, you know? Great explanation.
I'll come back to haunt you.
Yeah, well, that's great. Any questions?
No.
Okay. I hate to say it, but when I always, when you're talking about the explanations, I look over at Barry, knowing that he was your mentor, and if he's shaking his head like this, I'm like, okay, well then, that's my second right there, that he's corroborating what you're saying.
I didn't
so.
know I was shaking my head.
Is it?
Well, you were.
You were so I make a motion to correct the previous description of the 2020 permanent road dedication for Abigail Way and to accept the permanent dedication for the next section of Abigail Way to Jordan Dash Lane.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Capaldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
I guess, Paul, you could explain, I know that 2 weeks ago Chris and Glenn were here to explain kind of why they were lobbying to accept this bid over the low bid.
Yeah, I think the reasoning was not the low bid, but the low bid did not have the appropriate equipment
Yeah,
to
Yeah.
perform the services in a timely fashion.
yeah, there was some, and they missed some things in the bid
Right.
process.
They missed a couple things.
Yeah.
And
So we're
at
taking
that- and
it
I-
second lowest.
Yeah, so, and at that time, the board totally understood and said, yes, we'll do
Right.
that, so here we are, so, any questions on this one, gang? No, well, then I make a motion to award the town mowing services bid to Rochester Lawn Care, Inc.
Second.
Do we need the amount in that motion?
What?
Do we need the amount in the motion?
Yes.
I believe we do.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No, you know what? Thank goodness, Patty, that you're on that. And of course, I didn't.
I don't
bring
have it in my
Do
packet.
you have the minutes from the last? Oh, yeah. Wait a minute. We have the minutes here from, because we went over when Glenn and Chris were here, the difference. Well, I think it was it a workshop?
There's multiple,
I'm looking at it wasn't, oh, you know what? Knowing my luck, it's gonna be the January 14th workshop that we don't have the minutes tonight.
we just table this till next meeting if you want. 'Cause remember each part was bid separately.
eye into general, oh, you might have it right there.
Do,
If you look at the 14th, that would have been the workshop on the 14th, I think that's when it, why did
I have total bid, broken out by years. Rochester Lawn Care, for 2021, the total bid was $3,881, and the extra mow is $584.
it's gotta be,
Yeah,
Per cut.
Broken out by years.
you know what?
why don't we table this? and
We're gonna
put back?
table it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we're gonna be cutting lawns
Let's
next
do
week,
it the right
so, make a motion to table this.
Second.
Until dollar specifics in the motion.
So Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
All right, and I'll make a note here, Dolly, that we'll get the specifics on that for the 2/18/21 board meeting. And then maybe we'll have a sub-resolution that Barry is the liaison to that department, authorizes John Cahill to stay on top of that lawn cutting, because I know that he's really behind this one. Mhm. Okay, well, hopefully we have specifics on this one. Art Patron, could you tell us a little bit about, or?
Yeah, this is a follow-up to the last two meetings we had with Bartle and Judas and the current state of the wastewater facility treatment plant. This is a resolution that allows the supervisor to sign a contract with Bartle and Judas for up to $45,000, authorizing them to complete a study and report phase services, which include a PER and a NYSERDA Flex Tech study at the treatment facility.
This was when Bartle and Judas and you and Rick came in on the 14th and showed the presentation in the 45-page, all that. And Paul, you might have some insights on this too. I know the letter is here from Art. The reason we're going with the amount of money on this resolution is to be better safe than sorry, even though the NYSERDA works, we're expecting a minimum of 14,000, and the way it was presented to us, if it's posed correctly, we could get as much as 21,000 from NYSERDA.
Correct.
Okay. Does the board understand that?
Yes.
So we're gonna approve this and hope we don't spend that much.
Well, and I gotta tell you, I mean, you know, I bet you we spend less because I think Paul is on a roll with NYSERDA this week,
We're on a roll.
you know?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
they certainly know him.
They do know him. And so I bet you if we use you to get the most money, I bet you they're like, okay, Paul, whatever you want.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll get their number.
Like this.
Careful, they might be listening.
I know.
No, they like him. He got us some money this week.
Good.
It was nice. Okay, well, does anybody have any questions?
Nope.
Make a motion to allow, no, I'm not gonna make this motion.
So I would make a motion to allow the supervisor to sign a contract with Barton and LaJudas up to $45,000, authorizing them to complete study and report phase services, PER and NYSERDA Flex Tech study at the Town of Webster wastewater treatment facility.
Second.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. Barry, the next three, the appointments to the ProSAR board, were you at the ProSAR meeting with these three
Yeah,
individuals?
you want me to read them?
Well, and I know that we had talked back at the organizational meeting or a previous meeting where instead of appointing them, I think Chris and you wanted them to come and attend a meeting to see if
did.
and everything looked good, I guess.
They were wonderful.
Well, let's have at it then.
Okay, I'll move to appoint Robert Bebout to the ProStar Board for a term of 3 years, ending December 31, 2023.
Second.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
I would move to appoint Katrina Hall to the ProStar Board for a term of 3 years, ending in December 31, 2023.
Second?
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
I would move to appoint Heather Monet to the ProStar Board for a term of 3 years, ending December 31, 2023.
Second.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. And, kind of an off the record, we started the, item 1 at 8:25, it's 8:47, 22 minutes, so far as we come to the last item of the evening.
And now we're going to be here for another half hour.
Well, and that's, I guess, I mean, because she's producing the show, Paul, do you know about this, or is this?
This is Karen.
I know.
Yeah.
Karen has been doing a
think she,
massive cleaning
Yes.
of the house.
Clean out the place.
This is awesome. Did you put the camera on yourself?
No, I didn't, so you can't see me. The wizard, I don't come out from behind the screen. It's basically a purge of old equipment that is either no longer working or no longer compatible with what we have at the studio. So it's all old studio equipment that's going to go to electronics recycling. The computers are all going to go to the IT department, where they will be handling the recycling for them. Thank you, good night.
Let the record show she exists.
That was good.
Okay, well.
You don't have to read all these things out.
Yeah, right.
No, various.
Oh, thank you,
I'd like to
Charlie.
declare the following asset transfers from Webster Cable Access Department. Various TVs, AV switches, monitors, cameras, video tripods, computers, computer monitors, and television, another computer, and that's it.
They would be listed, Madam Clerk, in the minutes in any event, correct?
Yes.
All right, so, and those will be accessible to the public, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Okay?
Second?
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. Okay, well, that concludes the formal agenda for this evening. We will have the phones open for a few minutes if anybody wants to call in. And one of my resolutions was that I was not going to have Attorney Genesi have to read.
Well, I don't have to read anything, Mr. Supervisor. I do have to request you and the board if you would go into executive session so that I may discuss a matter of proposed litigation with the board and yourself. And that is pursuant to Public Officers Law 105, Subdivision 1, Subdivision D.
Okay. And that is what we are making a motion to do.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Now, we'll still let the phones ring for a minute or two. What will happen, once again, kind of the clunkiness of COVID board meetings with the public not being here. When we go to executive session, the meeting is essentially over to the public. The screen will go off. When we come out of executive session, then we would close out the meeting with the hammer down. Nothing will happen after the executive session. Is that a good way to describe it, Attorney Genesi?
Yes, I would also ask that Finance Director Adams be invited to the executive session.
Yes, sir. Mandatory. So, maybe because we overstayed our welcome tonight, since the phone lines aren't heating up, Karen, whenever you want to shut down the TV, we would be done. Well, we'll let Karen